from the Ticats Audio Network, this is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
This Canadian quarterback continues to win while another earns an unexpected victory in his debut. What is wrong with the back-to-back East Division champions, and who is the most exciting player in the three-down game? This is the CFL This Week, the podcast that goes deep with the most opinionated, knowledgeable, and sometimes controversial topics and characters the Canadian Football League has to offer. I'm your cruise director, Bubba O'Neil. This week, I have two co-hosts. He produces content for Sportsnet and CFL.ca at the highest level. Say hello, Donnovan Bennett.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Following an off-season free agent move from Regina to Winnipeg, he is the voice of the Blue Bombers, Derek Taylor. Thanks for joining us, Derek.
I'm very happy to. I keep following winning teams, right? I think my winning record is like Bo Levi Mitchell-like. My broadcaster wins are through the roof.
Hey guys, let's get going.
Bubba, he's so expensive they couldn't afford Andrew Harris after he got there.
It's all right though. He was the younger product apparently. Let's get right to business, guys.
Hey, you pay for quality. You guys know you pay for quality.
Elks quarterback Trey Ford is a winner in his first start on the road versus the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Donnovan, what did you like about his game? What needs to improve?
Well, I like that he won, ultimately, right? That's fair or unfair. That's how we judge quarterbacks. It's quite frankly probably unfair, even though they're the most important player on the field. But that was a team that needed a win. They needed a jolt. He certainly gave them that. He obviously created some history being the first U Sports or CIS or CIAU, depending on how old you are, QB, to win in the regular season since I believe Greg Barber in '85, first black, U Sports quarterback to ever win in the CFL. What I liked is, although he's youthful, like he might as well be Warren Moon in that, like he's an old soul. Doesn't get bothered. It's very steady, easy. And think about it. We talk about the transition from U Sports to the CFL. This is a kid who had never played on national television. Never. And the biggest crowd he would have played in front of was like homecoming at Queens, homecoming at Western, homecoming at Guelph, 10, 12,000. His first start in the CFL, Canada Day at Tim Hortons Field on TSN, with the panel on site. And it wasn't too big for him. I mean, what can he improve? The offense wasn't great. He better hug everybody on that defense for essentially setting them up and keeping them in the football game. The question is always going to be, about him as a passer, even though he did thread the needle nicely, for score. But you saw the athleticism plays right away. Outrunning angles. Simone Lawrence, one of the best defenders in the league, left him really. And so the fact that he was calm and nothing was too big for him, especially when they were down, I think is a real good sign.
Derek, 15 out of 26, 159 through the air, a touchdown, an interception. Ran the ball 6 times for 61 yards, including his longest being 14. I mean, not spectacular numbers, but winning numbers in his case for a rookie.
Well, defense aided, right? He started the drive at, I think, the 30, one at the 28, and then the touchdown that won the game. So a full team effort there. Donnovan nails it with the moment wasn't too big for Trey Ford. There were parts within that where, he might have left the pocket a little too early on that one, or maybe hanging there a little longer here. This is a guy in his essentially his second game and first start, so that stuff is totally within line of what I would expect. His running is incredible. I saw it in the preseason, and he's leaving professional, longtime professional athletes behind with these runs. So they're fantastic. What's he got to improve? It was a lot of short area stuff, right? It was 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It was 1 yard past the line of scrimmage that got 15 yards after the catch. He led Darrell Walker into what could have been a bomb of a hit, which we've seen a ton of that this season, of quarterbacks getting receivers killed. So it's honestly, I went through all the snaps just this morning, and I thought I'm actually pretty impressed for the reasons Donnovan mentioned, of from U Sports to the CFL. This is a start against a real CFL defense in the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and if you told me that Trey Ford had been, around the league for 4 years, I would believe you because everything looked like it should have or better.
The crazy thing was, I mean, unless Chris Jones, and we know Chris Jones is a kind of guy that does things his way, not the way anyone else does it, the release of the news of him being a starter, now Trey may have known, but the fact that that came out so late, nobody expected this. I mean, yes, the team was winless, but in week 4, just like that, Donnovan, I think that was a shock to many in the league.
I didn't expect him to get into the game week 1. Some people didn't expect him to make the team. So all of this was unexpected. And, Chris Jones, he doesn't care where you're from. You can be from Mars. Can you play? Can you help me or not? And that goes for both sides of the ball. I'm somewhat, though, still have questions on how this works. Because in the CFL football, we're talking about 300 to 500 through the air. I don't think at his best he's going to get there. So what's the formula that this can be successful? I talked to a coach on the weekend. He said this is the formula because when you look at it and you rewatch the tape, DT, they haven't even really put in a lot of design runs for him yet, right? So when that comes, that's another threat. The formula is, can you throw for 200? Can you rush for 50 to 80? Can you tie the backside down with your legs so now we can rush with Wilder for 100 to 120? And can you not turn the ball over? And can our defense keep us in games? And Chris Jones' defense, they like to end it quick. Either you're scoring or we're scoring. One thing's happening fast. So can our defense and our special teams put us in a position to succeed? That's the formula. I don't know if that plays for 3 months. I don't know if you can continue to live on such small margins, but evidently, Chris Jones is not afraid of gambling, and that's where they are right now. But I just don't know if you can do that week in, week out and hope that can be successful. This is not the NFL where you have 3 downs, and you can do that with Lamar Jackson. This is just 3-down football. So I'm fascinated to see it and wondering what you guys think if it continue to work.
Well, it's been going well for Nathan Rourke so far, right? That short area stuff with the run threat. BC was able to scheme receivers wide open in the couple of games for Rourke so far. We'll see what happens as he gets tougher tests along the way. I think you're right. Like you can't. It's been said, we want to just move the ball down the field. We want to nickel and dime and take what they give us. But at some point, you have to take from the defense, right? You have to be able to. There was threading the needle to Lawler on the touchdown pass, going right to left in that game. You need to go and take 20 and 30-yard chunks. You can't just rely on this. You have Darrell Walker, right? That guy can. I assume that guy could still make plays in this league. So that has to come for long-term success. But I mean, Bubba, for the first start ever, there are guys that go in there and they look like they just want to throw themselves off a building. And Ford looked none of that. And that Edmonton offense, I mean, as much as it was, if you're giving out medals for the wins, a lot goes to the defense. The Edmonton offense looked all right at spots in that game.
The interesting thing to me, Derek, is that he's done this before, Chris Jones, as we talk about him, with Brandon Bridge, with the same thing as a member of the Riders at that one time. And he replaced a guy like, I think it was Kevin Glenn, if memory serves me correct. But the interesting thing here is Nick Arbuckle wants to play. Like, let's not. Nick Arbuckle came to Edmonton to play football. So where we talk about Nathan Rourke had sort of Mike Riley at the end of his career as that groomer, we always talk about someone to rely on, that veteran to say, hey, do this, do that. Hey, maintain your confidence. Is this a tough position for Trey Ford to be in? Because the guy, I know they always want to play, but Nick Arbuckle wants to be on the football field.
The story of Nick Arbuckle, I expect Donnovan will write this at some point as well. The story of Nick Arbuckle and how he was the golden child and now nobody wants him and he's getting pushed aside for randos and Chris Jones reindeer games with his roster, and who knows where Arbuckle's going to line up at. Hey, he's our deep lying safety instead of Charles Nelson this time. Arbuckle has to want to play, right? Because in 2020 he was the next one after that season filling in for Bo in Calgary.
Yeah, Nick Arbuckle wants to play, but Nick Arbuckle Arbuckle has to consistently play well. I mean, you mentioned Kevin Glenn earlier. He's soon to be challenging Kevin Glenn for franchises that he's played with. The difference is he's not leading any of them to victories. And so, they were looking for a reason to make him the starter in Toronto. The Edmonton, the Ottawa situation was always a bit weird, and certainly he started the season as the starter in Edmonton and was inconsistent, and not for lack of weapons. Right? There's a lot of QBs in this league that would love to trade skill position players with Nick Arbuckle. So I mean, it's a long season. I don't think we've necessarily seen the last of him. But at some point when you're that age and you've been around the league for a bit and you are the golden child, you have to grab a job and claim it and take it, right? And quite frankly, that's what Rourke has done. He's left no doubt, because I think we could have had a real conversation of, should Michael O'Connor actually be the guy in BC over Nathan Rourke? And Rourke has left no doubt. Like, no, this is my job. This is my team. Put the billboards up. And that's what we expected for Arbuckle in multiple scenarios, and it just hasn't happened yet.
Well, let's talk about Rourke.
Maybe Hamilton, Bubba.
Sorry, let's talk about Rourke. I mean, I didn't think he played his best this week, but he won again, threw a couple of picks. We're starting to hear some, I don't know if this is just talk or idle talk, that this guy's got NFL opportunities, Derek. I mean, is this realistic, or are we jumping the gun here?
I think it's realistic, seeing what we've seen so far. Rourke, again, has been, I think I had his depth of target in that first start at a little over 3 yards downfield per target. And you go, okay, I want to see some more of that. So that second game, he early on threw that corner route to the outside, just a perfect ball. And then he threw one late that had Dunnigan just screaming at how great a throw that was. And you go, okay, more of those. We love that. This is good. We've got some of those on film as well in times that we need it. What will he do next weekend against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers defense? Okay, let's get a look at that. What will he do when it's the Calgary Stampeders defense? Or, what will he do in some of these other matchups? I was going to say Toronto's defense, but Toronto's defense didn't particularly show up for that affair. I think it's Rourke's a big enough body. He moves real well. He can run the ball, designed run, whatever kind of run you like. And if this throwing thing is for real, the one he's shown in little flashes where you can attack down the field, I think he's absolutely, this is a guy who will potentially get signing money to go to the NFL.
Donnovan, 23 out of 31, high completion percentage for another week. 359 through the air, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And again, we talk about Trey Ford and the mobility. This is even better. 5 rushes, 87 yards, including that. I mean, that 50-yard touchdown, we've seen quarterbacks run that before and usually get hunted down. He was pulling away from a DB. This guy's got skill.
Yeah, he also outruns angles. We shouldn't be calling him sneaky athletic because he's a white quarterback. He's athletic. He's just flat out athletic. And I love how the bar is now so high. You said, didn't play that well. He's a Canadian quarterback in his first month, and he threw for 359. And all of a sudden we're like, just 359, Nathan Rourke? Listen, I think the NFL is real. Quite frankly, if we remember, and it was a while ago because, this was pre-pandemic for him, or in the height of the pandemic, he's someone who had NFL interest coming out of the MAC, a conference that has put many quarterbacks in the NFL, and they've had great success. And he tore up that conference, quite frankly. And he was someone at the time who NFL evaluators, when he went through that process, were looking at, sort of in the role of a Taysom Hill. Could do a lot of different things because he's so athletic, could play some quarterback, but could play some specials, could hand him the ball and run with it. So the fact that, he's been such a factor with his legs is not surprising at all, given his pedigree. And it's his age why the NFL is real. He's still only 24 years old. So you're talking about someone who's, been in a pro experience, in a pro environment for a couple of years, again, played, well at the NCAA level, and was expecting to, if not get drafted, at least, get some camp offers coming out of college. So now this is a second opportunity. So I do think that is real. What I loved about him in this game was, his first interception comes on his 91st pass attempt, this year as a starter, has 2 interceptions in the span of 5 passes. And again, doesn't faze him, doesn't get rattled, stays within himself, doesn't try to make up for it on the next play. And I know you mentioned DT, the depth of target is short. They're really only making him read half the field, which I think is smart. But you don't go broke by putting money in the bank. He takes what defense gives him, very similar to in a way, late Ricky Ray or Zach right now, Claros. And then when he needs to make a big play 1, 2, 3 times a game, he's able to strike because the completion percentage is so high. And I think that's the difference between Rourke and Ford. Is Rourke is at a guy, he's at 80s right now, and let's say that's going to come back to the mean in the 70s or 60s. Trey is in the 50s, and you'll be happy if he gets to the 60s. And the fact that he stays on schedule, he keeps his offense on the field, is why you see a great difference. And I think what their ceilings might be at this level. But I was talking to Enoch Mwamba about it, and Enoch's like, well, it's only reading half the field. It's keeping it super simple. I'm like, dude, it's going to be scary hours. If he's doing this and he's only reading half the field, wait until he sees coordinators for a second, third, fourth time. And he's really reading the field, because as many guys as he's hit wide open, DT, he's missed some guys that have been wide open as well. And once he starts to have the game slow down, he might not be at this level for a long time, the numbers that he could put up. I don't know if I've seen a player make an immediate impact right away, because the CFL game takes a while to learn, since Casey Printers in BC. Like that's where my mind goes.
I'll throw you one, and please take this in the what we thought of him after one game. But Rakeem Cato in his first game was something like 20 of 25 and showed off athleticism, and totally different athletes and quarterbacks, and I get that. But it's something where a buddy of mine calculated it, and Rourke's completion percentage over expected is double digits. Like it's way higher than it should be based on the throws that he's chosen. So you look at that and go, this is going to regress. What does it look like when it does regress and he starts getting average luck and defenses start to take things away from him? Because for one game, I remember being in the studio, and the panel was just raving about Rakeem Cato, and because the numbers looked unbelievable for a bit, and then Cato had the career he had, because that's the way most guys at this level end up going. It can go a lot of ways from here. But it's going to come down to earth a little bit. Just where will it settle at is the thing I'm interested to see for Rourke.
The thing I watched this guy. I mean, I was fortunate enough because the big argument, is he from Oakville or is he from Victoria? That's seemingly going on throughout the league right now. And when he was in Oakville, I did a couple of his high school football games, and I mean, there's certain things that you can't help but identify even at that level. And I'm going to say he was probably 16 years old. I'm like, look at the footwork, look at the drop. I mean, all of it just looked real. It looked pro. It looked way ahead of any high school quarterback that I'd basically been seeing, for all my years of calling high school football games. And it's incredible to see. And I think you also remember too, last year when Mike Riley was having the arm problems, game number 1 in Regina, Rourke steps in there, was the starter, and 2 of his first 3 passes are intercepted, 1 returned by Nick Marshall for a touchdown. And you're like, oy, this guy is going to be kind of in a tough position. He's got a lot to learn. I can't remember a quarterback, Canadian or not, that's playing this CFL game that has just advanced himself so quickly, Derek.
Yeah, that's tough to think. And in that game that you mentioned, the final play of the game was he got pressured and threw an interception to AC Leonard that killed any chance of the comeback, right? Like, that he's come up from there, that could absolutely crush guys. Who is I'm stuck trying to think of anybody who has done that, and we've seen guys that we expect to do that, like Dane Evans, and it's just gone completely off the cliff for him. So whatever Jordan McSimic and the BC Lions are doing, whatever Nathan Rourke is doing, whatever it means to have that stacked a receiving core and that impressive a defense, BC, keep doing it, because they could be a real. I said in advance of the season, I said in the preseason, if Nathan Rourke is even average, if he's even Matt Nichols, BC's going to be a problem. And he is far above average right now. He can't even see average from where he is.
Well, he's certainly making what seemed to be a very suspect offensive line look very, very good. Hey, let's talk about the Tiger Cats. You did bring up Dane Evans' name. Hey, they're 0-4. You kind of have to wonder if this bye week that they are now have entered, does it fall at the right time, or should they just get back? They wish to need to get back on the field. And Derek, what are you making any changes there?
I would love to say that there are changes to be made, but you don't have Jeremiah Masoli anymore. Hamilton was in Winnipeg for week 3, and I had a couple days before watched their week 2 game and thought, okay, well, Dane is moving the ball with one read, Braylon Addison underneath, one read there, one read here. So when we started calling the game, it was about 2 or 3 throws for Hamilton into the game, and I turned to my color guy, Doug Brown, and said, Doug, is he making literally one read? And he said, well, that one was, let me watch it. And it was just, it's frustrating as a viewer, because I kind of, it's unfair for it to be frustrating, and I get that, but it was one read and then I'm throwing it into the stands, and it's one read and I'm gonna get crushed, and some of that, sure, troubles on the offensive line, but I don't know it. I can't say Dane is broken, but I start to wonder if it's getting that way. I couldn't believe that this is a guy who rescued the team in the East Final last year.
Yep. Looks
like this to start the following season. Dane has done some fantastic things in this league, but my overall trepidation with him is exactly games like this. It really one? All you have is the one read, and then you're humming it into the bench. There's no other play to be made here, and you can tell by the way I'm describing this that I don't know what they know, and I don't know what Tommy Condell knows, but it just. You have to be better than that to be at the CFL level, and you have to be better than that to win football games. There wasn't a chance they were winning the game against Winnipeg. They had some bad luck in some of the other games, and Dane's interception luck has been incredibly bad, right? There are interceptions that are poor, and there are interceptions that are in no way your fault, and he has had way more than his share of interceptions that are in no way his fault. But don't forget, fumbles are also a thing.
Yeah.
And I don't understand what's going on in the fumble game there. Because you just have to protect the ball better than that at this level. There are so many. I'm hitting a range of things, Bubba, with my frustration over Dane Evans so far, but this is not what Hamilton signed up for.
I mean, you're hitting a range of things, but these are same things that are being talked about by Tiger Cats broadcasters. Luke Tasker, being one of them, the color analyst, and he kind of agreed with you. He said, you know what, the interceptions you can kind of live with, but in terms of ball security, you can't fumble the football, and a lot of these fumbles seem to be happening. Oddly enough, at the most crucial times, and it's tough for the Tiger Cats you've given up a 24-point lead against Calgary at home. You've given up a 10-point lead at home to the Edmonton Elks, who are they were a winless team. So I don't know what what Dane Evans has to do. You can't turn the football over. He is throwing for some big yards. 65% completion percentage is respectable. But the team that won back-to-back Eastern Conference Division champions and weren't expected to be 0-4 are 0-4.
Well, evidently Dane Evans has to walk the football to his receivers and hand it to them. Because if he just throws it to them, somehow they'll find a way to tip it up into the air to a defender. I mean, listen, it's not obviously the start they wanted. 0-4, as you mentioned. First time they started 0-4 since they started 0-8 in 2017. And Ticats fans will know that season didn't end well. I think
that year cost Zach Caleros' job as the quarterback, and Ken Austin got promoted to some scripted position, the assistant to the general manager of president, otherwise June Jones came in.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a couple things. One, I think some of it's just bad luck, where these turnovers are happening in bunches, and then Dane, is starting to press, feeling, right, this is my team now. I'm the guy. I have to get us out of this, and it all snowballs from there. But I think we're also seeing a bit of the talent drain. They've lost, skill position players in division. And when you are the team in the division for a while, people come for your players, your coaches, your executives. So I think that's part of it. I think the only saving grace is the fact that The East is so bad. As we record this now, the West is 10-1 versus the East, and so Hamilton has to, like by definition, play somebody in the East, and someone's got to get a win. So if it's me and I'm a competitor, I don't want to buy. I want to get back on the field. I don't want to sit with this for a couple of weeks. But luckily, there's only one other East team playing, this week, so they can't get that far behind anybody else in the division. But yeah, they're not good enough anymore to continue to turn the ball over the way they have. But if we take a step back and look at the landscape of the division, they're 0-4, and I'd argue they may have played the best. Like when you think of who has won the most quarters or played the best in the most quarters, the Argos have put together like 2 good quarters. Montreal maybe 4 or 5. Ottawa has put together some, but they haven't won any games. Like Hamilton has led late in games, and found ways every week to lose games.
That's certainly what everyone's kind of going through right now. Let me talk a little technical thing about the game and what the Tiger Cats seem to be going through. Simone Lawrence, I believe, had 6 tackles in the loss. But yet, and we're talking Simone Lawrence, a guy that was Eastern Division Defensive Player of the Year last year. Normally, every game he makes, I think, one impact play. He has not made it in. He has not intercepted. No forced fumbles. No fumble recoveries. No touchdowns. Now they're talking about that weak side linebacker having a tougher job right now with the moving of the hash marks, and that now his athleticism is being, I don't know, burned in some ways, or being used up by having to cover backs coming out of the backfield, cover more slot back coverage. Has that hurt a guy like Simone Lawrence in terms of making, the impact that he normally makes in a ball game there, Derek?
I'd be surprised if that's the case. I was looking at some numbers last night, and teams are using the field side fractionally more league-wide, but it's not a significant difference, right? The numbers out to the far side, instead of 11.5% of attempts, it's 12.5% of attempts. So at least fractionally, it's a little more, but nothing yet to make a difference. I think opportunities kind of have to be there. And this, when I think of, I don't really remember Simone in the game against Winnipeg. Honestly, I remember Javon Santos-Knox. I remember the halfbacks getting toasted. I don't remember too much from the front. There's a lot of guys I would point to on that Hamilton defense as, I would like you to play better if I'm the head coach in Hamilton, because that defense should be a strength, but right from the middle with Micah and Dylan Wynn and a revitalized Ted Laurent, right, through Santos Knox, through Tunde Adeleke, who was dropping the hammer on dudes in that Calgary game repeatedly. There's a lot to go around, and Simone, who for me was the player of the year on defense last year, I wouldn't for me put too much on him.
You talk about Micah Johnson. I don't think he has a tackle. I don't think he has recorded a tackle so far this season.
Man,
Donnovan, this is we talk about the offense and the struggles that the Ticats are going through. This, maybe there's a point to be made about the defense that they can't win them a game, we'll say.
Well, DT rightly says that Simone was probably that dude on defense. But for me, if I was scheming up against this Hamilton defense over the last couple of years, the guy who put the most fear in my heart was Jagger Davis, and he's not there. He changes the line of scrimmage, takes 2, often eats up blockers, so people like Simone can run free, always making the quarterback feel uncomfortable. I think that's a big loss. And going back to the hash marks, and again, it's been a month for a bunch of teams, less than 4 games. So it's tough to say. I do think if we were in the era of the Rays and the Calvillos, when we had those veteran QBs, I think that schematically what we'd see with these close hash marks in terms of having so much room to the quote-unquote weak side that you could really run field side games on that side, and having interesting 4x1s and 3x2s, and putting defense in compromising positions would be greater. I think right now we're in an era where we have a lot of young QBs who, quite frankly, are not reading all that much, and so I think some of that will come in terms of those games. But to your point, Bubba, we were already starting to trend that way. Like the Sam linebacker is essentially a DB. Like it might as well not be a linebacker, so much so that many Sams just sit in the DB rooms. We were starting to get to the point where like Wills had to do a lot of DB safety type things. And I think this might exacerbate that trend. For me, no disrespect to all my friends who are linebackers, I think the linebacker position is probably somewhat antiquated, right? If I was really investing money, it would be on DNs and DBs. But I think if you're playing in the modern day CFL, if you're a linebacker, a lot of your work comes to you. And so Masoli is one of the few guys who can go get some work, but we'll see over time. I would like to see a larger sample to see if the hash marks is playing into why a guy like him isn't putting up big numbers and making impact plays.
Let's kind of stick with the Tiger Cats, and their next game will be against the Ottawa Redblacks at Tim Hortons Field, where an old friend comes back, or friend turned foe, and Jeremiah Masoli leading that Redblacks team. Both teams without a win. 0-3 will be 0-3 versus 0-4. Starting to hear some rumbles around. The fans in Hamilton are always going to be up and down. We know that. I think that's in any market. But we're also hearing around the league that, and I think maybe you guys might have hinted at it, that maybe the Tiger Cats selected the wrong quarterback. If you were to start a team there, Donnovan, you got Masoli and you have Dane Evans, who would you take to be your guy?
Well, for the record, I like them both. As players, as guys. I think Hamilton had the luxury of having three guys who could get you through a week in their QB room, which is somewhat unheard of outside of, I suppose, Winnipeg when they won the Cup a couple years ago. I think the Hamilton Tiger Cats made the right decision in Dane Evans. If they were given a mulligan, I think they would make the same decision. Dane Evans is younger. He has less of an injury history, although he has had his own unfortunate injuries. But let's not forget, Dane Evans took this team to two Grey Cups. You don't get to either Grey Cup. Dane Evans doesn't play his ass off in BMO last year, and quite frankly, steady the ship after Masoli went down a couple years ago. So he didn't play great in either Grey Cup, but you're not in that game without him. So listen, if Hamilton said we're having a garage sale and Dane Evans is on the lawn, there'd be a lot of other GMs making the phone call. So I think it's the case of a guy who, and he said it, is in a bit of a hitter slump. I don't think he's forgot how to spin the ball and play football. And again, if all of those tips and overthrows coming into INTs end up a different way, are we having a different conversation? He hits Sean Thomas Erlington in OT, essentially in the chest, and he gets hit and ball goes in the air and it's interception. So some of it is on him, no question, but I still think he's the right guy in Hamilton.
To that point, that Willie Jefferson interception in return for a touchdown, that was one of the wilder bounces I've ever seen. I don't know. I think it hit Addison in the hand and then just went about 6 feet in the air, and Big Willie Styles is going into the end zone talking trash. So a real tough thing there, Derek. I mean, again, who are you taking, Masoli or Evans?
I totally get why Hamilton took Evans. He's 5 years younger, and you can't compete with that. Honestly, I've just never seen it from Dane Evans, so I would have stuck with Masoli. And I think of the game against Winnipeg that the two guys have played. Masoli's played them twice, and Evans has played them once. Masoli could have won both those games. Like the Redblacks under Masoli could have won both those games if not for, in the game in Winnipeg, a drop of an 80-yard touchdown by Jalen Acklin, and then Masoli himself forgetting to kick a field goal at halftime. That was some real weird stuff going on. But they went toe-to-toe with the Bombers, and the Ticats did not really in that one. I haven't seen it from Dane, and when it gets it to be its biggest points, he rescues them in the East Final. But if he doesn't get hurt in that Grey Cup, I'm convinced in 2021 that Hamilton loses that game by 2 scores or more. Just because watching the 19 Grey Cup, my whole, I had my prop bets going on that one, and my concern was, when will Dane throw in his first interception? oh, it was on his first pass of the game. Whatever it takes, the sum total of what it takes to be a top level quarterback in the CFL, I just have never seen it from Dane Evans. So if it was me and I'm putting the next 3 years of my franchise on the line, if it had to be Dane, I probably would have looked somewhere else. I probably would have tried to find someone else because I haven't seen it yet, and I've seen too much to the negative of it, or too much disproving it, that even the flashes of greatness like that East Final, they don't suck me in anymore. I see what you can do, but you don't do what you can do often enough for me to roll with you long term.
I mean, in that 15.
The funny thing is, though, I don't think they made this decision this offseason. They've had Dane for a while, and they've liked him and groomed him for a while. Let's not forget, he was in camp with Vern Adams Jr. and Johnny Manziel, and they moved on and they kept Dane. So they've had in their sights at some point, this is going to be the starter and the leader of our franchise. We just weren't sure when. And, contracts aligned and pressure aligned, and they had to make a choice. But I believe in that building, they felt that he's going to be, the next face of that franchise for a long time. So we'll see how it pans out.
They just have no running game.
It's a situation that's going to pan out.
Yeah.
What do you like about Masoli, Derek? I mean, what is it that you like about Masoli so much?
Well,
in the comparison,
my love for Masoli has limited upside, right? Because he's the guy who got pulled from that East Final because he is prone to make weird decisions that just are incomprehensible. I'm going to flip this ball backward over my head as I'm getting sacked. Why would you ever do that? What I like about Masoli is when he's on the field and he's playing average, Masoli average or better, he's in control. The ball needs to be out in a second and a half. Okay, I can do that. I can get it out wide. I can get it to where it needs to be. Oh, I can make plays with my feet if I need to as well. There are a few quarterbacks in the league who are as slippery mobile as Masoli is, even at 33. So if I'm taking a guy, and if I'm going from a raw start, like this is the 2014 Ottawa Redblacks, I need a quarterback to start my franchise. It would be Masoli in that case. If I need one to take me to a Grey Cup, in the Grey Cup final, I get one guy for one game between the two, it's going to be Masoli as well. He's far from perfect, and I had, as a fan, I am frustrated with him in certain ways, but he gives me more than I think Dane Evans does.
Well, it's funny, like we forget 2019, before he gets hurt, he was playing at an MOP level. Like, I don't think there was another QB at his level before he went down. And to your point, DT, when he's right, he's just a point guard. He's in control. He's making smart decisions. Okay, if I have to do it myself, I will. But I'm just distributing, keeping everybody happy. And when he's not right, he goes from being Chris Paul to Russell Westbrook as a point guard.
Yeah, guys, that's current day Russell Westbrook. Not the great triple-double Russell Westbrook, but
right.
This $47 million burden Russell Westbrook. Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, Alouettes kick returner Chandler Worthy goes the distance for a second week in a row. Straight up, is he the most exciting player in the Canadian game right now, Donnovan? If not, who is?
Listen, I think Nathan Rourke is even though he dinks and dunks, has me staying up late. So I would say he's the most exciting. But Worthy is right up there, and this is like the reverse Chad Owens, where he's showing some flashes. He's in camp with Montreal. They cut him. Toronto scoops him up. Has a great career. And Chandler Worthy, mind you, a lot of it was the end of seasons when games didn't really mean as much, or when he was lower on the depth chart, guys were hurt. But he showed flashes not only as a returner, but as a good depth receiver in Toronto. And so the fact that he was cut this year, I found somewhat puzzling. I know they've brought in a lot of receivers over the last couple of years, and they've invested in the position via the draft, but he's someone that makes plays. And so, I'm not surprised to see him, making so many explosive plays in Montreal. And it's, just another player that has left the building in Toronto that kind of scratches your head and saying, well, if only they had held on to this guy for a little bit longer. I add, Cody Fajardo to that list. Yeah, I think Worthy is worthy of all the praise that he's gotten so far. And if they now have the dilemma of he is so valuable as a returner, do we keep him there exclusively, or do we try to work him more into our offense? But will that diminish what he's doing for us on specials?
DT, you like him, or someone else really making you excited?
Well, I just before we popped on, I watched the return touchdown against the Riders. Shout out to Tyson Philpott, who gets ahead of Derek Moncrief, and Moncrief is fast. I thought Moncrief had the angle, gets in front of him, throws his arms up, and steps in front of him to get that last block without drawing a penalty. I thought that was beautiful. Donnovan took the guy I would go with, and Nathan Rourke is the most exciting. I need to give a shout out to Willie Jefferson as the most exciting player in the league, because the second he gets that wacky bounce against Hamilton, he was getting through Dane Evans into the end zone. Willie just 2021 wasn't 2019 for him, but he was still a CFL All-Star at Willie Jefferson. So just everything he can do in pressuring the quarterback, laying off and taking passes away. Oh, I dropped in the lane and now I've picked this one off. Oh, this one had a wacky bounce to me in the presence of mind to pick it off. I think Willie is right up there as the most exciting players in the league. I'm curious to see more from Worthy, though, because 2 return touchdowns already is in short order. It won't be 2 every 4 weeks, but Ottawa had a lot of heat around Devontae Dedmon, who then took to the NFL. Love the return games, and with all the rule changes, this is exactly what the CFL was hoping would happen in both the punt and kick return games.
And it's amazing so far, and I know it's early, and Donald, you brought that up, that it is early with 4 weeks for some teams. I'm surprised we haven't seen more guys go the distance in this with this sort of wider open field in the terms of the rule changes.
Well, I mean, you got a great return in Hamilton. Mind you, it was aided by a penalty. But can I throw a write-in vote as most entertaining and exciting to Lucky Whitehead? I mean, one, I don't know what you do with him in coverage. You try and give him press man, he runs by you. You lay off him, he just takes the 5-yard stop, and then as a running back after it's pitch and catch because Rourke is so accurate. What he's wearing is going to be entertaining. Smack talk that he's talking is entertaining. The mode of transportation to the stadium is entertaining. He'll go to playoff games and party with the fans, and that's entertaining to watch. I love his enthusiasm. He's such a great ambassador for the sport.
Yeah, Lucky Whitehead. Yeah,
you on board with that? You on board with that, Derek?
Oh, Lucky Whitehead is incredible. We haven't seen it this year to the extent we saw it last year, but all of a sudden the first game in 2021, he's whipping past Nick Marshall for a 75-yard touchdown, and I thought, oh, this looks different than it looked when he was a Bomber. Lucky Whitehead is a great call as well, because that's a guy, I mean, with Burnham just getting out of the hospital with broken ribs, going to need some more receiving yards from the rest of the gang, and a few 75-yarders from Lucky Whitehead would absolutely do.
Burnham might have been on that list had he been healthy in terms of must-see guys on TV in this Canadian game. One last one, guys. Let me get you out on this one. I know you got a game to prepare for, Derek. We got a game here, and I know there's a holiday weekend going on. We had a game on Monday. We had a Monday football game. And I kind of said something last week that maybe annoyed some people, in the fact that why wouldn't we just spread out the calendar a little bit more? Would you want to see games? I mean, it's really targeted maybe because of TSN for that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes formula. Would you want to see games played, Derek, on other days other than those 3 days?
No, I'm good. I'm good Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then, I'm fine with that. And then we abandon Thursdays when the NFL kicks in and takes over Thursdays. I like it. Random Tuesday games or Wednesday, like the NCAA football now puts games on Tuesday in certain conferences. I like knowing it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's for me. And honestly, like this week, going from a Monday, Saturday, the Riders last week, 2 weeks ago, had one practice day before the game with Montreal, and they got just torched, probably in great part because of that. I like the thought of keeping it, regular and giving athletes the chance to be at their optimal. That's, for me, that's what we should be going for.
Donna, would you go for Sunday Night Football in the CFL?
Sunday, sure, but like anything other than that, Monday, no. I mean, listen, the Argos are shared tenants of BMO, and the TFC played this weekend. Hence why we're getting a game on a Monday with a grass field. You need some time in between, but Thursday to Saturday, Sunday is already pretty spread out when you talk about professional football. There's one Thursday game in the NFL, but generally everything is on Sunday. The bulk of college football is on Saturday, even though you'd have the odd Thursday game. We've already seen early in the season, people having to do, the Sunday to Thursday turnaround, which isn't great. When you talk about a day of rest, recovery, and treatment, you talk about a day of install and prep, a day of travel, and then obviously a game day, that eats up your prep. And so in terms of keeping athletes healthy, in terms of keeping the football good, and keeping the storylines condensed, I think what we have is great. I would love to see, Saturday doubleheaders as much as possible, as especially in the summer, leveraging some of the great weather. Quite frankly, I'd love to see a Saturday triple header. But yeah, I'm not really in love of the Monday football. I wouldn't be surprised if it does a good number for our friends at ESPN Plus with the July 4th weekend. But you also have to remember that the CFL game will be going head-to-head with a bunch of afternoon baseball games. I love a condensed schedule, and so I think it's already as spread out as much as it could be.
I will say I still think there's a opportunity, we'll say, on All-Star Major League Baseball All-Star Weekend after the All-Star Game Classic, which is generally on a Tuesday. There's that Wednesday generally is void of sometimes any sports whatsoever. I think there's an opportunity there to maybe showcase your product there, Derek.
If you had 3 teams having the bye the week before, you could put a couple of them on the Wednesday. Yeah, like that's like the ESPN created the ESPY Awards to fill up that night, right? Like that one I could be willing to contemplate, but how do you get them to the next week, right? If they play on a Wednesday, do they then play on a Sunday? Thursday, Friday, Saturday with 3 days in between games. It's okay, but I want all these guys to be at their best. And I mean, if Saskatchewan in the game against Montreal is any indication, they were nowhere near their best in that game because they turn around and pump them the week after and go, oh, okay, maybe it was the short week that really incapacitated them in that one.
Donnovan, final thoughts?
Yeah, I just think, at some point, and yeah, maybe you could leverage that one scenario and build some consistency around it if you do it year over year. Maybe you have a rivalry week, add that to the narrative. But at some point, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. One, like, less people are going through the gates midweek than they would on the weekends. Two, if you got maybe a bit of a bigger TV number, but a lineman is playing, it's tired, and he gets bull rushed and falls into the quarterback, and the quarterback sprains his MCL and is hurt. Like, at what point is that a net positive? I think, in the NFL, they have to fight and claw for an extra week in their schedule, and there were many concessions for it to happen, and their schedule is still shorter than the CFL schedule with smaller rosters. So I think we have to remember that the product is at its best when the players are the healthiest.
DT, DB, you guys have been fantastic. Thank you so much for your opinions and your knowledge. It's off the charts, and we really appreciate it here on the Ticats Audio Network. And I know we have to get a little down and dirty with the Ticats here on the Ticats Audio Network, but you're just telling it like it is, and we certainly appreciate that. Folks, we're here almost every single Monday. If you want to join us here on the CFL this week, this has been another great edition. We look forward to chatting with you this week. Join us every Monday, podcast catcher, wherever you're listening to your podcast. And, of course, we're on YouTube. Like and subscribe. We much appreciate it. Again, you've been listening to the CFL This Week. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil. We'll talk to you next Monday.
The CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil. Subscribe, like, and get the deepest takes on Canada's game every Monday.